So after we ran the backtest on the ingested database, we are now going to show a new feature in zipline-trader 1.60, and that's the ability to use a different database backend instead of the default SQLite. So you could see here in the configuration file that you could define something new, which is called the backend, and you could add another backend database with type postgres. Other types may be added in the future, but right now this is the only one that you could use. And here you need to add the IP, the name of the database, and the credentials that you use. I'm not going to talk about security issues. Of course, if you run a database, don't open the port to the entire world or to your entire network. Make sure you're doing it securely. And I'm using Docker to run it locally. I'm not going to talk about that as well because that's a completely different video. But I assume that if you want to use Postgres, you know how to set Postgres, right? The advantages of using this instead of the SQLite is, one, you could put it remotely and you don't have to run it locally. And the second advantage is that it's additive data. So it does not create the database every day from nothing, which means it will be faster, right, to ingest the data, because you just add the new day that just passed. Alright, so I'm going to set up, I'm just going to use Docker and Docker Compose to run the Postgres database, which I did. And now I'm going to add this part right here to my configuration file. So let me just do that. 1 second. So I just added that, and of course I do not expose my credentials, so I just put asterisk instead, but of course the credentials should be there. And this is the new backend, and hopefully now when I ingest the data, we're going to see it right here. So the way it works is, if this part is defined, it's going to use that, and if it does not, it's going to use the SQLite backend. So let's take a look at the database. Right now it's empty, and hopefully once I run everything, we're going to see here the data. So let's see if it works. So if you remember correctly, the way we ingest the data is by running this script right here. So I just executed the same file as before with a different backend, and we can see that the three symbols are here. They were ingested, and if everything worked correctly, this will fill now with the data that we just ingested. And now we have a different backend, which is Postgres running inside a Docker container locally, and we could run the same backtest just as before. So we're just going to run the same test. It's going to run against the database we just created, and we get the same result as expected. So this is how we use a different backend. This is new in version 1.6. Also new in version 1.6 is the ability to use Alpha Vintage as a data source. And that's it. Next, we're going to see how to run the research environment and use Jupyter Notebook in order to work with the data and use pipeline and research it. So until next time.